Hi, welcome to Celebrate Recovery Live. I'm glad you all tuned in tonight to invest in yourself. My name is Shena. I have been recovering from codependency, domestic violence, abuse, low self-worth, having no value, people-pleasing, indecisiveness, guilt, shame, abandonment, and attachment trauma. Here's my story. I lived with both of my parents for the first 3 years of my life. My parents divorced when I was 3 years old, thus having no memories of living with my father. When they divorced, it left my sister, 14 months older than me, whom we have different fathers, and my mother in the two-bedroom apartment in Henrietta, New York, which, by the way, in the early 70s was decorated with beads hanging from the ceiling to separate rooms and oversized orange-white leather furniture with a large round coffee table that had yellow and brown circles carved into it. This I do have clear memories of because that same table decorated my first apartment. So now, back to the two-bedroom my mom's sister and I stayed in after my dad left. My sister and I shared a room, and although I cannot recollect the age she began touching me, I knew it was not right because I always felt icky inside. In my young mind, that was the best word I could use to describe or make sense of things. This behavior went on for years. When I was around 8 or 9 years old, it was a weekend for us to visit our dad's house, and I remember I told him what was going on. He confronted my mother, who simply said, "I'll talk to Nikki." That was my sister's name. My mother never talked to me, and nothing else was done about it. I begged my dad to live with him, but my mother said, "I'm sorry, you can't leave your sister behind." I cried and I was sad. No one heard my voice. I knew what I was feeling. I was indeed alone. From that point on, I formed the false belief that speaking up and looking out for myself didn't matter. No one heard, no one cared, and no one would do anything about it anyway. So my behaviors followed my belief. Don't speak up for yourself, Sheena. Let other people get what they need from you. Do what's best for them because you don't matter anyway. From then on, life just kept going. I was continually molested by my sister up until middle school. Going to my dad's was bittersweet. I could escape the madness that was going on in my bedroom at home, but for 2 days, I knew I would be leaving on Sunday afternoon. Also, I had a stepmother, sister, and brother that took my dad's attention away. My new siblings were cute. My sister Nikki was funny and outgoing, and my stepmother didn't like me. She faked it. I remember constantly trying to win her approval and love and never being good enough to get it. I had many memories of just wanting to feel included, but one particular one still stands out in my mind today. Some of you may be too young to remember, but when I was a little girl, they had this show that came to town called Sesame Street Live. It was huge. Every year I'd see the advertisement and think, this year my stepmother will let me come. But she never did. I'd stand by the door and watch my sister and brother leave for the show and come home with big characters, balloons, and prizes. What was wrong with me, I thought? What did I do to her to make her not like me? Every Sunday, I'd go back to my apartment crushed that I couldn't get my dad's attention, and my stepmother acted like I didn't matter. At home, my mother looked like a good mother on the outside, but the things I needed from her I never got. I never got a hug. She never said I love you. She never played games with me or took me places. I was clean, fed, and had a roof over my head. But what was missing were the cuddles or goofing around or hanging out with her, just talking. It was lonely. I so desperately wanted to feel loved by my mom, but I didn't. My dad, on the other hand, was more affectionate and did say I love you to me, and I could feel that, but it was just on the weekend and dreadfully painful when Sunday rolled around, as I said earlier. In middle school, the pain didn't stop. I became boy crazy, but I never got the boy. I was very thin and long, and I wore thick glasses, very large, very round eyeglasses, and I had a short afro jerry curl. Remember those? And to top it off, I was diagnosed with scoliosis in 7th grade. I wore a Milwaukee back brace that went from the top of my chin to the bottom of my pelvis. I was constantly picked up and teased, picked on and teased. The teasing slowed down and things got a little better for me when I tried out for the modified volleyball team. My mom got remarried and moved us to Fairport, New York by then. It turned out I was really good at it. often winning games by serving 15 straight points in a row. This helped me to build some confidence, and I ended up playing all through high school. I was captain of the team and went on to win our Section 5 tournament senior year. That was a positive thing in my life, but I was still hurting. Between the end of 8th grade and my freshman year, I started showing signs of mental health issues and recall being hospitalized twice. While I was there, I was fed through a slit in the door to my room and had to be on watch so I wouldn't harm myself or anyone else. To make matters worse, I was molested during that stay by a male patient. I missed school weeks at a time and then had to deal with the whispers behind my back and discussions of what happened to me. High school was hard, but at least I had two friends that were supportive of me, and one of them was my best friend, Amy. I called her Amers. She was the best and made the rest of high school bearable. I recall one day in high school during a lunch hour, I shared with this so-called boy who noticed me. He was on the football team, and I finally thought, wow, I must not be that ugly after all. It turned out that this friendship, relationship, situationship wasn't normal. My varsity coach said to me at practice one day, Sheena, you are codependent. I said, what's that? She told me. I dismissed her and never spoke the word again. And that day at lunch, in the band corridor, this so-called boyfriend hit me in my face, and that was the start of me allowing men to treat me any way they pleased. After that incident in high school, I ended up moving on to date a man that was 6 years older than me. That ended up with me being a sex object who took care of him emotionally while I was left confused and hurting. At the same time, I spent the end of high school up until I left for college being sexually abused by the lifeguard at my neighborhood pool. He was 7 years older than me. I knew what he was doing was wrong, but I kept going back, almost like I enjoyed it. At least I was being paid attention to. My high school years weren't that great, and now the time was approaching for me to look for colleges. My mother decided I would go on a bus college tour to visit HSBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, up and down the East Coast. On that tour, I was raped by the chaperone in a hotel along the way while everyone watched. I showered for hours afterwards and didn't speak for the rest of the trip. And 2 weeks after coming home, I was convinced I was worthless. When I left for college in Virginia, I thought maybe I could get away and escape from this craziness, but college just turned out to be one promiscuous encounter after the other. On Christmas break, home my sophomore year, I met a man my age who became my boyfriend. We continued dating my freshman year while I was away at college and all that following summer. In July, I found out I was pregnant. My mother told me to have an abortion so I could go back to college and get my education. I didn't have the abortion, and the father saw the baby one time and gave me $20 for diapers. I left college, moved back home, and found myself drinking wine coolers every night after I put my daughter to bed. By the time she was 1, I said to myself, this isn't working. I didn't have a drink of any kind for 24 years and don't like alcohol really to this day. I transferred to another college in the area and started going full-time while working as a cashier at Tops. I was on my way, so I thought. Instead, after being swept off my feet by a boy at a house party, the one time my mother let me go out and she watched my daughter, I found myself pregnant again and had my second child at the age of 24 years old. By the time my son was born, the father was out of the picture and I had a psychotic break. I was admitted to the psychiatric ward at Strong Memorial Hospital for several months. I was on all kinds of medications, including antipsychotics. I missed seeing my daughter get on the bus for her first day of kindergarten. When I finally got out, I was convinced I needed medication daily and was diagnosed with bipolar II disorder. I saw my psychiatrist, counselor, and nurse regularly and slowly started getting my life back. I found a church called Calvary Chapel and began going with my 2 children. I dug in deep, became a student of the Word, and learned a lot about God and the saving power of His Son, Jesus. My faith really started to grow. I began to know the scriptures and be able to interpret them. I studied the Bible, taught Sunday school, led vacation Bible school, offered up home Bible studies, and was in church 3 to 4 times a week with my kids. For 7 years, my life was peaceful. The time I spent in this church with God and with my children were the best years of my life. We grew closer together as a family, and everything appeared just right. But with all that said, I couldn't have believed what I was reading or learning about Jesus and how he could change my life and make it what he wanted it to be. Because once again, I was right back to my old ways. I found myself in 3 horrible relationships right after the other. One with a man who was verbally, emotionally, mentally, and physically abusive. I was trapped and couldn't get out, but I really didn't want to. I loved him. The relationship had a hold on me and resulted in my 3rd pregnancy. I was 34 years old. My world was out of control. This man was addicted to crack cocaine, and I had no idea how to handle this or what was happening most of the time. He would do things like grab me by the throat and choke me, or smother me with a pillow, steal from me, lie to me, and cheat on me with needing prescription medication from my OBGYN to prove it. The relationship came to an end because he went away to prison for 7 years. When he left, he was immediately replaced by a man who belittled me, put me down, and called me names. I was convinced I was nothing without him and had to ask him permission for everything. I did. He even convinced me that giving him money was what I was supposed to do to take care of him financially because he was taking such good care of me emotionally. He told my daughter, whose father went away to prison, to call him daddy, and I had to comply. My mind was gone. I was repeatedly raped by this man and felt dirty and ashamed. I had a nervous breakdown and was pulled from my teaching position as a UPK teacher. This abuse lasted for 3 years. On the way home from a trip to Georgia to see my dying grandmother, he verbally assaulted me in the car in front of my 3 children, and I knew I had to get away from this man, and I did. A month later, I was diagnosed with breast cancer on March 4th, 2011. On the other end of the phone, I heard the doctor say I had an infiltrating ductal carcinoma, which required one surgery after another, including a lumpectomy, 4 months of aggressive chemotherapy, and radiation every day for 6 weeks. It all caught up to me. My life, my hurts, habits, and hang-ups all manifested themselves in my body. I never blamed God for the circumstances of my life and my abusers. I accepted it and knew I wasn't going to die from cancer. Satan wasn't going to win. I had children who needed me. I would get better. I would live. I underwent all my surgeries and treatments and was 1 year in from a 5-year recovery plan. In 2012, the little baby I had while in college suggested Christian mingle, that I should just try it. The men are all Christians after all. So I signed up and thought, finally, I met a man who did Bible studies and devotions with me. He would pray and read the word out loud to me. The relationship ended up being nothing but spiritual abuse. And again, I found myself pregnant for the 4th time. I was this man's 8th baby mama, and my daughter was his 15th child. My father never spoke to me again after learning this, and he lived 10 minutes away. There I sat in disbelief with 3 children and was 4.5 months pregnant when my phone rang. It was my 3rd child's father. He was out of prison, calling and wanting to get back together. I knew this wasn't right, but the pull to me was irresistible. He started coming to visit and eventually moved in. I was a Christian woman living in sin, and I knew it. I was in turmoil, and again, my life was totally out of control. The promises he made of the drugs being out of his life was a lie to lure me back. Items started disappearing, money showed up missing, and my car was gone, and my kids and I were left for days without transportation. During this crazy time, I decided to visit the church my son went to when he was in high school for youth group. He was home for a break his freshman year of college and said, "Hey, Mom, you should come to Cross Creek Church with me this Sunday." I went. They were offering a small group transformation series that was being offered. I leaned over and said, "Landon, I want to do this." He suggested Pastor Jason, his former youth pastor, would be a good choice. We met some good people in that small group, but life was still spinning out of control. I was in church acting like a Christian but living like a sinner. The man I was living with, my daughter's father, and I got married February 14th, 2015. And I don't even like Valentine's Day. I thought, though, it would make everything better. At least I was doing something right. At least I wouldn't be living in sin. At least I wouldn't be fornicating any longer. Getting married was the one thing I could control. I finally did something right in God's sight. As bad as the marriage was, it might have been what started changing my life and me really believing that what God's word said about me was true. We kept attending church, and several times after reading the program about Celebrate Recovery, a place I could go to get help with my hurts, habits, and hangups, I knew that's exactly where I needed to be. It was November 2015 when I went to Celebrate Recovery for the first time by myself. I walked up the stairs of West Campus nervous and alone, but I knew it was something I needed to do. I went to the small group and listened to others share about their codependency. The word my high school volleyball coach told me 27 years ago. When I left, I said to myself, how is this going to help me? I'm just listening to everybody else talk about their problems. It was depressing and I felt worse. After that first visit, I didn't go back for a while, but then I realized it was a place that I needed to be. February 2016, I started going to Celebrate Recovery regularly. I bought myself the Celebrate Recovery Bible on February 19th, and in March, I joined a step study. April 15th was the day I declared my anniversary date. I was serious. I told myself I can recover and I'll never look back. I was going to recover from all these hurts, habits, and hangups that had plagued my life for so long. This past April, I've celebrated 4 years of recovering from abuse of my past and feelings of no self-worth, and my heart is so thankful. My recovery road has not been easy. Along the way, some things have happened that have hurt me deeply. I lost my father 2 years ago in March, and my best friend Amers, that I mentioned earlier, committed suicide 2 weeks later. My marriage was a wreck. I came to realize I was married to a narcissist, and the abuse, drug use, and mind games kept me on a roller coaster of highs and lows. I didn't know if I was coming or going half the time. 1 minute things were good, but I always knew disaster was around the corner. I waited for the good times and ignored the bad. I was devastated by these things happening, but I wasn't going to let it keep me from moving forward in my recovery. I was going to use it to fuel me to grow and get strong again. I was able to spend some time with my father before he passed away. I was able to help take care of him, to cook for him, to clean him, and that made me feel good. It taught me forgiveness and the power of it to repair things on the inside of me. It made me know that if I stayed true to myself, even though I was so deeply wounded and felt abandoned by him most of my life, I would be all right and God would fill in the rest. Celebrate Recovery, along with putting in the work, Thursday through Tuesday, I was able to see that bad choices people make have nothing to do with me. They are just simply choices people make, and they don't define who I am as a person. However, I can make a choice to be the daughter that I knew God wanted me to be for my dad before he passed away, and I'm so thankful for that. When I look back now, I remember I was saved in 1990, 30 years ago, on a college campus in Virginia. Thank God I was, because everything I've been through tells me it's only the saving hand of Jesus that kept me alive. I only knew Jesus, but unbelief kept me from believing it for me. Celebrate Recovery has helped me to realize that I am his beloved and made perfectly, that God thinks about me every day. He designed me to serve him, and my life isn't for Satan to destroy, but for God to be glorified. I'm beautiful on the inside and out because God's hand created me. I believe in God's timing, letting go and letting him work in my life and giving up trying to control everything. Steps 6 and 9 became vital in my recovery. I knew I needed to voluntarily submit to every change God wanted to make in my life and humbly ask him to remove my character defects. I knew I needed to evaluate all my relationships and offer forgiveness to those who have hurt me and make amends, except when it would hurt others. My eyes were open. These steps were the key to my freedom, admitting where I went wrong and truly forgiving others. I've made a lot of changes and adjustments to my relationships since I began recovery. I now know how to set defined boundaries and keep them. My relationship with my mother has grown tremendously in the last year, and half despite me never feeling loved by her. I also realize that the marriage I'm in is not healthy. God did not create me to suffer at the hand of domestic violence and narcissistic abuse. I've been taking steps to honor myself and to teach my children that living in an abusive situation is not the will of God and would never be his plan for them. The relationship that I have with myself now is one of love and valuing me. I don't need to people please or do things to make people like me or accept me or want me. I've discovered my value and I like myself. I love the way I look and how I see myself. My life has changed because of who God is. I am more than a conqueror. I trust God with my life, and that unbelief I talked about earlier is no longer an issue. I absolutely believe every promise that God has made for me. By working the program, I get to know myself more and more every day. I'm created in the image of the great I am, and because of that, I see people differently. I know I don't have to judge people and I can accept them for who they are, but that doesn't mean I have to allow them in my life. I did end up graduating from St. John Fisher College in Rochester, New York, and went on to receive my master's degree in education from Nazareth College. I'm cancer-free. I no longer take medication for bipolar disorder. I was cleared by my doctor a year and a half ago. My mind is clear and I have visions and goals for myself. I'm in a place where I'm starting a new business as a transformational speaker and life coach who helps women recover from narcissistic abuse and codependency so they don't repeat the cycle of staying in unhealthy relationships and they can learn to love themselves. Many other wonderful things have come out of Celebrate Recovery. I've served in Kids Zone as a storyteller. I'm one of the founders of the Women Growing in Grace Ministry, and I'm part of the leadership team and lead the Women's Abuse Small Share Group here at Celebrate Recovery. What encouragement would I give the newcomer? If you are tired of you and the way your life is headed, keep coming to Celebrate Recovery, to this online platform, and continue to come when we can meet again at the Gananda campus and have your life transformed. I cannot express enough the importance of small share groups. It is in these groups where you grow. You hear yourself process your own life out loud, and you get realizations about where you are and what you need to change. I was very wrong about my first impression of small share group at West Campus. Small groups changed my life and they can change yours too. So please log into Zoom tonight and allow your healing to begin. And lastly, get involved here at CR and serve alongside other people who want to see their life changed and miracles happen as well. I'll leave you with a few scriptures that have carried me through the years. Luke chapter 9, verse 62 says, "No man putting his hand on the plow and looking back is fit for the kingdom," meaning for me, whatever decisions I've made prior to today, I don't have to look back on my past. I can instead stand on Christ's word and not let the people of my past get in the way of what God's doing and moving me forward. All those men I mentioned in my past were there for a purpose, to show me something, to teach me something about me, so God could reach me and change me so I can serve him better and do his work by carrying out the perfect plan he's ordained for my life. Jeremiah 32, 17 and 27 reads, "God who made heaven and earth by his great power and stretched out arm, there is nothing too hard for me." This verse was a constant reminder to me that I could be changed and my life could be turned around. I'm so thankful for that and the hand that Celebrate Recovery has taken in orchestrating that plan for me. The last verse I want to leave you with tonight is one I learned many years ago, Galatians 2, verse 20. "I am crucified with Christ. Nevertheless, I live, yet not I, but Christ who lives in me. And the life I which now live, I live by the faith of the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. Today, I believe God's word is for me and you, and I'm grateful that God is using Celebrate Recovery to help change my life. Thank you for letting me share. Bye.